Ladies and gentlemen, let's GameInsider.com video. I have a question for you. What is the purpose of a GPU driver update? Now, if you answered a rather pretty good answer, to be totally honest, it's to improve stability of games, new titles, and of course, to improve the performance of games that are already out, you would answer pretty much what I would verbatim. However, there has been a slight hiccup because recently Nvidia have released a driver update. Now this driver update, 347.52, has actually removed the ability to overclock the graphics card in laptops. Physically, you're no longer able to overclock the GPU. Now, there are a couple of issues with this. The first is it's not very good from a PR standpoint because users are used to being able to overclock their graphics card. In other words, you know, they've been doing it for X amount of weeks or months, depending obviously how old their system is, and now they no longer can do that, and so it annoys them, it frustrates them, and it's not particularly good from a PR standpoint. However, there is a bigger issue. Various OEMs, so in other words that would be ASUS, MSI, Dell and others as well, have actually sold models of their laptops that are specifically stated to have overclocking as a graphics card feature. For example, ASUS has ASUS TurboMaster GPU technology in nice bold letters under its ad copy, and then states a GPU tweak supports 5% overclocking while an upgraded cooling system ensures the G series stays cool and quiet. Notice the key words there, that 5% overclock and an upgraded cooling system. In other words, one would assume that ASUS would have taken the liberty of doing some testing, saying, hey, this adds X amount of extra degrees, we need to ensure that our cooling system is capable and adequately able to dissipate this heat. Done. Now obviously overclocking, we know, in a poorly cooled situation, in other words, a standard laptop that doesn't have particularly good cooling, particularly cheaper models, it can have problems. In other words, the GPU could physically break, it could shorten the lifespan, and so on and so forth. There are a couple of more timid aspects of it. It does technically require a little bit of extra juice from the battery as well, but that's probably not a particularly big deal in many situations. So 5% overclock performance is not that great. Overclock and the actual frame rate on screen don't always scale 100% linearly, but even if, let's say it does, for the sake of argument, you know, if you're getting 55 frames a second, or let's say 50 frames a second in a game, a 10% overclock is only going to get you 54, 55, 56, depending on the scenario, whether it's full rate limited, whether it's more bandwidth limited, and so on and so forth. So it's only going to get you like 52, maybe 53 at an absolute push. And so certainly it's not going to make a game that was barely playable and let's just say 1080p suddenly run at 4K with absolutely no hiccups. But that's not really the point, and definitely not the perspective of customers. To a customer, they bought something with an advert or, you know, a feature set in mind, and they said, hey, I'm going to pay this extra bit of cash for this. And even if you assume that a user did not buy a GPU based on this, it's still going to kind of tick them off, because if you're used to a product, you know, doing something, and then suddenly what you consider to be an update, which you would associate to improve performance,